program, you've been chosen to enter the grid, a world imagined back in 1982, long before any of us were living our lives online. Now it's real, and it's waiting for you to ride. This is TRON Lightcycle Run.
TRON Lightcycle Run is a high-speed launch coaster over in the Tomorrowland section of Magic Kingdom. And while it's one of the newest additions to the Disney parks, the story behind it actually goes way back, based on the TRON film franchise, which started with the original movie in 1982, and then came back in 2010 with TRON Legacy. If you were around Disney parks back then, you might remember when they wrapped one of the monorails in that bright blue overlay to promote the film. It was called the Tronorail, and even though it didn't last long, it became a fan favorite. The original Tron, the movie that kicked off all of this, came out in 1982, released by Walt Disney Pictures during a time when computers were still more science fiction than a daily reality. It starred a young Jeff Bridges as Kevin Flynn, a former software engineer who gets pulled into a digital world after trying to hack into a powerful computer system. Once inside, he realizes the programs have personalities, relationships, even a kind of social order. What made Tron especially groundbreaking wasn't just the story, it was the way it looked. This was one of the very first major films to use extensive CGI, and at the time, it was completely unheard of. Most studios were afraid of it. The technology for CGI was new and expensive. Moviegoers didn't even know what it was. But director Steven Lisberger had been inspired by arcade games and the way computers were starting to shape pop culture. He saw potential in those pixelated screens and wanted to build a story around what it might be like to actually live inside the world. Visually, Tron didn't look like anything else at the time. Despite getting a decent amount of praise, Tron didn't exactly light up the box office when it was first released. Honestly, that's not too surprising when you consider what it was up against. E.T., the extraterrestrial, came out that same summer and completely dominated theaters. To most, Tron was too niche, too nerdy, and maybe a little too ahead of its time for a mainstream audience in 1982. But that didn't stop the film from making an impact. Tron slowly but surely built a devoted following, especially among animators, early tech enthusiasts, gamers, and anyone who saw where computers were headed. The film's influence spread mostly through word of mouth, VHS rentals, and eventually, internet fandoms. More than 2 decades after the original, Disney finally went back to the grid. In 2010, they released Tron Legacy, a long-awaited sequel that reintroduced the digital world to a new generation. This time, the story followed Sam Flynn, played by Garrett Hudlum, the now adult son of Kevin Flynn, who had mysteriously vanished years earlier. Sam ends up getting pulled into the grid just like his father once did, but the version he finds is darker, colder, and far more dangerous. Jeff Bridges returned as Kevin Flynn, but he also played Clue, his younger, digital counterpart. To pull it off, Disney used early de-aging technology. The overall vibe of Legacy was different from the original in a lot of ways. It leaned into a much more stylized, moody, cyberpunk look. One of the most talked about parts of the movie was the soundtrack. Disney brought in Daft Punk to score the film, and they completely nailed it. The music was electronic and intense in the best way, and it ended up giving the whole movie this really cool futuristic energy. With the success of Tron Legacy, it really only made sense for Disney to bring the franchise into the parks. The world of Tron already felt like something you'd want to step into. It had everything Imagineering could work with. So in 2016, when Shanghai Disneyland opened its gates, it featured a brand new Tomorrowland and a ride no one had ever seen before, TRON Lightcycle Power Run. TRON Lightcycle Power Run officially opened on June 16, 2016, and it was immediately one of the standout attractions in the park. The design was clearly pulled straight from Legacy. Everything from the glowing blue and the orange color scheme to the massive canopy structure out front that felt like it came right off the movie screen. Instead of leaning into retrofuturism like the older Tomorrowlands, Shanghai's version was all about clean lines, metallic finishes, and digital movement, and Tron fit perfectly into that space. But the real magic happens once you're on the ride itself. All that glowing architecture and cool design is just the beginning, because once you board your light cycle and launch into the grid, that's when Tron really comes to life. Guests board motorbike cycle coaster seats, which are definitely not your average roller coaster setup. You swing your leg over the light cycle like you're getting on a motorcycle. Lean your chest forward and grip the handlebars. A padded restraint locks in from behind and gently presses you into place. The ride uses a linear induction motor, or LIM, launch system, which means there's no slow uphill climb. Instead, you're catapulted forward almost instantly, reaching speeds of just under 60 miles per hour within seconds. That launch happens right under the massive glowing canopy, and if you ride it at night, everything around you pulses with this electric digital light show. It's a quick ride, only about 60 seconds from start to finish, but every second is packed. You whip through curves, dart between simulated energy gates, and glide through sleek, glowing tunnels that make you feel like you're racing deep inside the grid. It's short but intense, and most people get off wishing it lasted just a little bit longer. One of the coolest parts of TRON Lightcycle Power Run, and something that really sets it apart from other attractions, is the way the ride moves between indoor and outdoor sections. And like all great Disney attractions, there's a story woven into the experience. Guests are told they're being digitalized into the system and selected to compete for Team Blue, racing against the rogue Team Orange, which is pulled straight from the light cycle battles in the films. You don't need to have seen the movies to get what's happening, but if you have, it's a really satisfying detail. From the moment it opened in Shanghai, the ride was a massive hit. It didn't take long for it to become one of the most popular attractions in the park, and honestly, it's easy to see why. It's fast, it's unique, and it looks absolutely incredible, especially at night when the canopy lights up. Because the ride was such a hit in Shanghai, it didn't take long for Disney to start thinking about bringing it stateside. At the 2017 D23 Expo, they officially announced that a version of the ride would be coming to Walt Disney World, specifically to Magic Kingdom. The Tron reveal was one of the most talked about moments that year, especially for fans of Magic Kingdom, who had been waiting for something new and big to arrive in Tomorrowland. People were excited, not just because the ride looked amazing, but because it meant Disney was finally giving Tomorrowland some love again. And this time, it was something that looked and felt like the actual future. Construction on the ride was planned to start in 2018. What made this announcement even more exciting was that the ride wasn't replacing anything. It was going to be built on brand new land. The location? Right next to Space Mountain, tucked behind the Tomorrowland Speedway and the Walt Disney World railroad tracks. That meant fans weren't losing a beloved classic. They were getting something totally new without having to say goodbye to anything. The goal was to have TRON up and running by 2021, just in time to celebrate Walt Disney World's 50th anniversary. And for a while, it looked like they might actually make it. But then, like so many other things, the project hit a wall in 2020. The global COVID-19 pandemic brought theme park construction to a halt across the board. Work on TRON slowed down dramatically. And on top of that, supply chain issues made it hard to get materials and equipment where they needed to go. Deadlines were pushed and budgets shifted. For a while, fans weren't sure when or if the ride would actually open. After years of construction updates, drone footage, speculation, and a whole lot of waiting, TRON Lightcycle Run finally opened to the public on April 4th, 2023. For fans who had been watching the ride take shape behind construction walls since 2018, the opening felt like a long time coming, and the finished product delivered. The US version of the ride is nearly identical to its Shanghai counterpart, but there are a few small changes that make the Magic Kingdom version feel tailored for its audience. The queue narration was updated and expanded for clarity, giving guests a better sense of the storyline as they move through the digitalization process. Most importantly, the last row of each train offers upright seating for guests who may not be able to comfortably ride the traditional Lightcycle vehicle, something that was added to make the attraction more accessible without compromising the overall experience. One of the ride's most iconic features, both visually and structurally, is the massive canopy that arcs over the outdoor launch section. This flowing, color-shifting structure is made of ETFE, a super strong, flexible plastic. It's one of the largest freeform ETFE canopies ever built for a Disney park. When guests enter the queue for TRON Lightcycle Run, it's clear right away that it isn't just another coaster. It's a full-on experience. The storyline kicks off the moment you walk in. You're inside a digitalization facility being scanned and selected to join Team Blue. After that part of the queue, you enter a small room, and what looks like a solid wall in front of you suddenly disappears, and behind it, you see a full Lightcycle launch room, complete with vehicles revving and ready to go. Before boarding, guests are prompted to store their belongings in lockers. But these aren't your standard clunky theme park lockers. These are digital, double-sided lockers, and they're genuinely one of the most practical and well-thought-out parts of the whole experience. Here's how it works. On your way into the loading area, you scan your park ticket or magic band. Find an open locker and stash your stuff. Then, after the ride, you pick everything up from the opposite side, which exits directly into the post-ride hallway. These lockers are seamless, efficient, and most importantly, it avoids the chaotic bottleneck where guests trying to open lockers are running straight into guests who just want to move on with their day. It's such a small change, but it makes a big difference in keeping the day flowing. Once bags are stashed, it's time to board your very own Lightcycle. Loading works almost exactly the same as it does in Shanghai. The only real difference here is that the Florida version includes a modified upright seat in the last row of each train. So if you're not comfortable in the standard Lightcycle position or have mobility needs, let a cast member know at this point. They'll make sure you're placed in one of the accessible seats. After everyone's locked in, the launch kicks off fast. The Lightcycles blast forward under the outdoor canopy. Then you dive into the indoor simulation section, where the digital race begins. By the time the race wraps up, usually with Team Blue taking the win, you've only been riding for about 60 seconds, about the same length as the Shanghai version. When the attraction officially opened in 2023, TRON Lightcycle Run instantly became one of the most in-demand rides at Magic Kingdom. It didn't matter that it had already existed in Shanghai for years. Wait times regularly climb over an hour. The appeal is pretty obvious. TRON Lightcycle Run is one of the fastest coasters Disney has ever built, and one of the only motorcycle-style coasters in the US, which already makes it stand out. But what really surprises people is how much they love it, even if they've never seen a TRON movie in their life. You don't have to know the characters or the backstory to appreciate how unique and high-tech this ride feels. A lot of people walk off the ride and head straight into the gift shop, where they're suddenly picking up TRON identity discs, light-up jackets, and Team Blue versus Team Orange gear, even if they have no clue what any of it meant an hour earlier. For some, the curiosity kicks in even earlier. Plenty of guests end up watching TRON Legacy at home before their trip, just to get a feel for the world they're about to step into. There's been a noticeable boost of interest in Tomorrowland lately, thanks in large part to TRON. It's brought a fresh wave of energy to a part of the park that has started to feel a little like 1990s Chuck E. Cheese in a space helmet. Nostalgic? Sure, but not exactly the ultra-modern future Walt was dreaming of. Now, with Lightcycle Run pulling huge crowds and Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger spin getting a small facelift, fans are starting to ask, what's next? Could the momentum spark a full Tomorrowland refresh? Will some of the older attractions finally get a long overdue update? No one knows for sure, but TRON has definitely reminded people that this part of the park still has room to evolve and the potential to actually feel futuristic again. So what's next for the TRON franchise and for the attractions it's inspired? A new film, TRON Ares, starring Jared Leto, is currently scheduled for release in October 2025. Depending on how the movie is received, it's possible we'll see some updates or additions to the ride, kind of like how Pirates of the Caribbean got new scenes and characters after the film series took off. With the ride doing so well in both Shanghai and Walt Disney World, fans have started to wonder if this is just the beginning of TRON in the Disney parks. Could we see TRON show up in Disneyland? Disneyland Paris? So far, Disney hasn't made any official announcements, but given the popularity of the ride, the return of the franchise to theaters, and the ongoing love for all things high-tech and neon, it doesn't seem that far-fetched. TRON Lightcycle Run blends speed, immersion, and just enough story to make it feel like more than a coaster. It's one of those rare cases where a cult sci-fi film actually made the jump to a theme park ride and nailed it. Whether you've loved TRON for decades or you've never seen the movies at all, the experience speaks for itself. What did you think? Did it live up to the hype? If Disney built a second TRON ride, what would you want it to look like? Let's talk in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Enchanted Entertainment to hear more about the past, present, and future of your favorite Disney park attractions.